There are moments in life when you look back at everything you've been through and realize, almost with disbelief, that you're still here. You've survived experiences that would have broken many people, situations that seemed impossible to climb out of, and chapters so heavy that even remembering them now feels unreal. There were days when the weight was too much, nights when you questioned whether you would make it through, and stretches of time when you carried pain silently because no one around you could understand the full extent of what you were facing. And yet, against all odds, you survived. You endured. You kept going even when something inside you felt like it was fracturing. That alone is extraordinary. Your survival is not simply a matter of chance. It is a testament to a strength within you that most people never tap into. It reflects a depth of resilience that cannot be taught, a kind of endurance that comes from somewhere far beyond the physical world. The fact that you are still here, still breathing, still searching for meaning, still trying to understand why you had to carry so much, says something about who you truly are. You were not meant to be defeated by what you lived through. You were meant to rise because of it. And whether you've realized it yet or not, your journey has been shaped and guided in ways that are far from ordinary. There were moments when you felt completely alone, but you were never truly abandoned. Even in your darkest hours, something kept you moving forward. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was a sudden shift in perspective. Maybe it was a small sign that arrived just when you were ready to give up. Or maybe it was something you couldn't explain. A presence, a pull, a quiet voice urging you not to stop here. These moments were not random. They were the markers of a path being shaped for you. One that required you to endure challenges others would not have survived. Not because you deserved the pain, but because your spirit was strong enough to transform it. In this video, we are going to explore that truth. We're going to look at why you survived what others couldn't, what your resilience actually reveals about your identity, and why your journey has been so different from the people around you. This is not about glorifying suffering. It is about recognizing what your survival means in a spiritual sense. It is about understanding the deeper purpose behind the intensity of your experiences and the reason your path has been carved the way it has. You didn't make it through because life was easy. You made it through because something within you refused to fall, and something beyond you refused to let you go. As you listen, allow yourself to acknowledge your own strength without minimizing it. Allow yourself to recognize that what you have endured is not something everyone could have carried. And allow yourself to consider that your resilience might be pointing towards something greater than you've understood until now. If this message is connecting with you already, if you feel like you're hearing something you've needed for a long time, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who might need the same reminder, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the messages that follow. This is only the beginning. There are hardships that people encounter in life, and then there are the kinds of experiences that shape a person down to the bone. You know the difference, because what you lived through was not the kind of difficulty people casually discuss or compare. It wasn't a single setback or a temporary challenge. It was a series of trials that cut deep, lingered long, and left marks that no one around you could fully understand. The weight you carried was not ordinary, and pretending otherwise does not change the truth of it. You endured situations that would have shattered someone without your inner structure, without your emotional depth, without the strength that has followed you quietly through every chapter of your life. The hardships you faced were the kind that demand more than endurance. They require transformation. They force a person into versions of themselves they didn't know existed, simply because surviving becomes the only option. The emotional wounds you sustained were not surface-level disappointments. They were deep cuts. Betrayals you didn't deserve, losses you weren't prepared for, and moments when life pulled the ground out from under you without warning. You've walked through seasons where everything you trusted collapsed, where people you relied on changed without explanation, and where the world felt unrecognizable compared to the life you thought you were building. Some of the pain you carried never passed through your voice. You didn't share it with others because you sensed instinctively that they wouldn't understand. Not because they didn't care, but because they lacked the capacity, the emotional vocabulary, or the spiritual framework to grasp what you were going through. You learned to swallow your grief quietly, to process your fear alone, to wipe your face in private so no one could misinterpret your vulnerability as weakness. And because of that, there were long stretches where you felt like you were living two lives, the one you showed others and the one you carried internally, heavy and unspoken. You know what it feels like to experience betrayal that shifts the entire way you look at people. You know the fracture that happens when someone you trusted deeply becomes a source of pain instead of comfort. The kind of betrayal that doesn't just hurt your feelings, but alters your understanding of safety, changes the way you love, and forces you to rebuild your sense of self from the ground up. Many people never experience that level of rupture, and even fewer come out on the other side with their empathy intact. Yet somehow, despite everything, you did. You also know loss in a way that reshaped the architecture of your heart. Loss that felt like your world turned silent. Loss that disconnected you from yourself. Loss that forced you to function while carrying an invisible weight that others couldn't see, but that you felt in your chest every single day. These are not experiences that people simply move on from. They settle into a person. They change the way you think, the way you love, the way you protect yourself. They become part of your emotional framework. And yet, even with that, you kept going. Then there were the nights, the dark ones, the ones that stretched longer than they should have. The ones when you stared at the ceiling or curled up on the floor, feeling the kind of loneliness that can't be described with ordinary language. They call it the dark night of the soul for a reason. It's the kind of experience that strips a person of everything they thought they were and leaves them standing face to face with their rawest truth. Not everyone goes through a dark night of the soul, and among the ones who do, not everyone makes it back with their spirit intact. But you did. You returned carrying wisdom, depth, and a sensitivity that can't be taught. There were moments when you felt invisible, moments when you were in a room full of people, but still felt completely alone. Moments when your heart was screaming for a kind of understanding that no one around you could give. You learned to internalize your strength. You learned to fight battles quietly. You learned to keep moving, even when life felt like it was dragging you backward. These moments weren't weaknesses. They were evidence of the extraordinary pressure your spirit was under. Ordinary souls crumble under that kind of weight. But you didn't. You've walked through emotional storms that left you questioning your entire reason for being here. You've survived psychological and spiritual challenges that don't show up in photographs or conversations. You've been hurt in ways that changed your trust, your boundaries, your worldview. You've undergone periods when your identity dissolved and had to be rebuilt piece by piece. These are not light experiences. These are not the standard challenges that people recover from in a weekend. These are life-altering, spirit-shaping passages that leave permanent imprints. Many people meet adversity and stop there. They freeze, collapse, withdraw, or never fully recover. But your struggles were different. They were the kind of trials that require soul strength, not surface strength, not social courage, not temporary resilience, but spiritual endurance that develops over lifetimes. This is why your path has looked different from the people around you. You were carrying weights that most people never touch. And even when you felt like you were barely holding on, you were still operating at a level of internal resilience far beyond what anyone could see. Maybe there were times when you questioned your own resilience. Maybe you thought you were weak because you felt the pain so sharply, or because the journey took so long. But feeling deeply does not make you weak. It makes you human, aware, and capable of transformation. The fact that you felt everything so intensely and still continued forward is proof of strength, not fragility. People who lack depth cannot endure deep pain. Only those who have spiritual weight, emotional intelligence, and intuitive capacity survive the kind of experiences that nearly pulled you under. Your hardships were not random. They were not meaningless. They were not a measurement of your worth. They were a measurement of your capacity. They revealed a level of resilience that is rare, a level of emotional depth that is uncomfortable but powerful, and a level of spiritual endurance that few people possess. Your ability to survive what you did is not something to overlook. It is evidence of a soul that is built differently, stronger, deeper, older, more aware than most. You've been tested in ways that forced you to grow faster than others, and while that may have been painful, it also shaped you into someone capable of seeing the world with clarity. The depth of your wounds created the depth of your understanding. The heaviness of your experiences created the strength in your presence. The intensity of your past created the resilience you now carry. And while others might have broken under the same weight, you didn't. You survived because your soul is built to endure, to transform, and to rise. This is why your journey looks the way it does. You were never meant for simple lessons. You were meant for the deep ones, the kind that forge a person into someone capable of purpose, insight, and extraordinary strength. And in surviving what others couldn't, you revealed the truth of who you are. Someone with a spirit strong enough to withstand storms that were never meant to be ordinary. There were moments in your life when everything felt like it was collapsing all at once. Moments when the pressure was so heavy that you could barely breathe. When the world around you seemed to tighten. When your thoughts felt like they were spiraling into darker and darker places. You remember those moments vividly, not because you want to, but because they marked turning points in your story. They were the points where everything could have ended, the points where many people would have broken, the points where your strength alone should not have been enough. And yet, something kept you here. Something held you together just enough to take the next breath, just enough to hold on for one more day, just enough to keep moving even when you didn't know why you should. That something was not an accident. It was not coincidence. It was guidance. There have been times when you felt like you were inches away from falling apart, but a sudden shift in your thoughts pulled you back. Times when you were dangerously close to giving up, but an unexpected moment of clarity cut through the chaos. Times when you were overwhelmed by fear or sadness, and yet a strange calmness washed over you for reasons you couldn't explain. These moments were not random, they were intervention. They were the quiet, invisible presence of your spirit guides, stepping in when the human weight became too much for you to carry alone. Your spirit guides are not abstract ideas or fantasies. They are energetic forces, conscious presences, and protective influences that have been walking beside you long before you understood how spiritually intense your journey would become. They are connected to your soul, to your destiny, and to the blueprint of your life. You may not see them in the physical sense, but you have felt them, especially in the darkest moments of your life. The moments when you should have collapsed, but didn't. The moments when you should have lost yourself completely, but something within you stayed anchored. That anchoring was them. Think back to times when your life seemed to be unraveling too quickly. You may not have realized it then, but each time you reached a breaking point, a shift happened. Maybe someone reached out at just the right moment. Maybe a sudden idea gave you a way out of something that seemed impossible. Maybe your emotions quieted just long enough for you to make a decision that saved you. Even the smallest of these moments carried enormous impact. They were the hands of your guides, subtle but steady, guiding you through storms not everyone could survive. There were chapters where you felt like you were walking through darkness with no direction at all. You didn't know which step to take or how to escape the weight pressing down on you. Yet somehow, despite the confusion and fear, you always found a way forward. Not because you always knew the right choice, but because something kept aligning things in front of you, signs, opportunities, realizations, like breadcrumbs placed along the path just when you needed them. This is what guidance looks like in a soul that has been chosen to continue its journey. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is subtle, steady, and unfailing. Your guides kept you grounded when everything around you was unstable. They protected your mind when the darkness tried to pull you in. They pulled you forward when your body was exhausted and your spirit felt like it was sinking. You may have thought you were alone, but the very fact that you are here now proves that you were never abandoned, not even for a moment. If you truly had been alone, some of those chapters would have consumed you. Your pain was real, but so was the protection surrounding you. There were moments when your story could have ended. Really consider that. Not metaphorically, literally. Moments when you were so overwhelmed that you didn't know how you were still standing. Moments when you were drawn toward things that could have destroyed you. Moments when you were trapped in cycles that should have broken you permanently. Moments when you were around people who could have damaged your spirit beyond repair. Moments when hopelessness sat with you like a shadow. whispering things that could have taken you down a different path entirely. But each time, something intervened. A door closed before you could walk through it. A person left your life before their presence could do irreversible harm. A plan failed because it would have led you into deeper danger. A sudden inner voice urged you to wait, to stop, to choose differently. These were not setbacks. These were interventions. These were protections. These were the ways your spirit guides redirected your timeline, ensuring that you would not fall into a path that was never meant for you. You may not have understood it at the time. You may have even been angry about some of the things that fell apart. But now, with the perspective you've gained, you can look back and see how certain events saved you, how certain endings were actually rescue missions, how certain losses were actually protection, how certain delays were actually realignments. Your guides were not punishing you, they were preserving you. This preservation is not random, it is intentional. You are not someone who simply stumbled through life surviving by accident. You are someone who is being carried through a path with purpose. The reason your story did not end during your darkest chapters is because it wasn't meant to. There is more for you to do here. There is more for you to become. There is more for you to contribute, experience, create, and understand. The very fact that you survived what others could not is evidence of that purpose. You were chosen, not in an egoic sense, not in a grandiose way, but in a spiritual way. Chosen to grow through experiences that would deepen your compassion. Chosen to develop intuition that can help you navigate complex territory. Chosen to build inner strength that can withstand pressure most people will never understand. Chosen to walk a path that requires guidance, protection, and intervention. Because your journey carries significance beyond a single lifetime. Your survival was not luck. It was design. It was preparation. It was preservation for something ahead. You didn't go through everything you did just to return to an ordinary life and pretend nothing happened. You went through those experiences because your spirit has a trajectory that requires depth. It requires resilience. It requires courage. And it requires the kind of spiritual guidance that has been with you since the beginning. If you had been an ordinary soul, your journey would have been ordinary. Your challenges would have been softer. Your lessons would have been lighter. But because your purpose is greater, your experiences were greater too. That is why your guides stayed close. That is why they intervened when you were about to fall into something that had the potential to hold you forever. That is why they protected you, even when you didn't realize you needed protection. And that is why you are still here. What pulled you forward wasn't just your willpower, though your will was strong. What grounded you wasn't just your logic, though your mind fought hard. What stabilized you during chaos wasn't coincidence. It was alignment. It was intervention. It was protection. Your spirit guides protected you because your path needs you alive, awake and aware. They guided you because your next chapter requires someone who has walked through fire and carried the lessons back. They pulled you forward because your purpose is not behind you, it's ahead of you. And while you may not fully understand that purpose yet, the fact that you are still here is the first and clearest sign that your story is nowhere near finished. There is a truth about your survival that you may not have fully understood until now. The challenges you lived through were never meant to be the final chapter of your story. Survival was not the conclusion, it was the initiation. It was the moment the next phase of your path began. When someone faces the kind of darkness you did and still emerges with their heart intact, their mind aware, and their spirit unbroken, it is not simply recovery, it is activation. Your survival is the signal that your purpose is beginning to unfold, even if you cannot yet see the shape of it. Everything you endured has been preparing you for something that requires depth, clarity, and strength, qualities that can only be forged through experiences that strip away illusions and awaken the truth within a person. Your suffering sharpened your intuition in ways that ordinary life never could. When you live through situations that demand heightened awareness just to stay emotionally afloat, your internal senses begin to awaken. You start noticing subtle shifts in energy, inconsistencies in people's intentions, and emotional cues that others overlook. You develop an instinct for danger, dishonesty, and imbalance, not because you're paranoid, but because your spirit has learned to detect things before they can harm you. Intuition becomes a survival tool, and over time, it evolves into something even more powerful: inner knowing. What once protected you now guides you. Your emotional intelligence deepened because you were forced to understand your own feelings at a level most people never reach. You learned to recognize the difference between sadness and depletion, fear and intuition, loneliness and misalignment. You became fluent in your own internal world because you had no choice but to navigate it. Emotional intelligence is not simply the ability to empathize with others, it is the ability to understand yourself deeply enough that your reactions, your boundaries, and your insights become refined. You didn't learn this through ease, you learned it through fire. And now, this internal clarity has become one of your greatest strengths. Hardship also carved out a clarity within you that is rare. When you have lost everything familiar, when life has reduced you to your barest form, you start to see what truly matters. You can look at a situation and sense what is real and what is illusion. You can meet a person and feel their truth without needing them to speak it aloud. You can recognize what aligns with your spirit and what will lead you into another dead end. This clarity is not accidental, it is earned, and it is essential for the purpose you are stepping into next. People often misunderstand the word purpose. They imagine it as a single task or mission they are meant to accomplish. But purpose is not singular. Purpose is the direction your spirit grows toward. It is the expression of everything you have learned, survived, and transformed. Your survival means your purpose is active within you now, shaping your path even when you don't consciously recognize it. The reason your life has never resembled the lives of people around you is because your soul has never been headed toward the same destination. You were never meant to fit into the patterns others follow. Your path was always meant to unfold differently. The hardships you lived through were not punishments, they were preparation. They stripped away the parts of you that were never truly yours. They removed illusions, attachments, and beliefs that would have blocked your growth. They taught you discernment, resilience, and strength, because your purpose requires all of those qualities. You were being molded. Every painful chapter was shaping you into someone capable of seeing life with depth and responding to it with wisdom. Think about the way your perspective has changed over the years. You see patterns clearly now. You sense energy shifts before they happen. You understand when something is ending, even before you have the words for it. You notice when someone's presence feels wrong, or when an environment feels off. You know the difference between paths that drain you and paths that expand you. This awareness is not a coincidence. It is the result of the emotional and spiritual training you didn't know you were undergoing. The kind of purpose you carry cannot be born from comfort. It requires someone who has stood at the edge and stepped back with greater clarity. Your past hardships also taught you compassion without naivety. You understand pain intimately, so you can recognize it in others. But unlike before, you no longer allow your empathy to become self-betrayal. You no longer confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. You no longer give your energy to people who only know how to take. This shift is part of your preparation. Your purpose will require you to interact with others from a place of strength, not depletion. The boundaries you have learned to set, the emotional patterns you have broken, and the courage you have shown in walking away from harmful situations are all signs that you are ready for the next stage of your path. Your survival also awakened a version of yourself you might not have recognized at first. The stronger you became, the more you began to grow into your true identity. The things that once attracted you no longer do. The environments that once felt safe now feel suffocating. The relationships that once felt essential now feel misaligned. This is the natural evolution of someone stepping into their purpose. Your spirit outgrew spaces your mind wasn't ready to leave. Life removed those spaces not to hurt you, but to free you. You were never meant to stay small. The experiences that nearly broke you awakened your potential. They stretched your soul beyond its previous limits and revealed layers of your identity you never would have discovered through ease. You learned how strong you are because you had to be strong. You learned how wise you are because you had no choice but to understand what was happening inside you. You learned how intuitive you are because your intuition became the only voice you could trust. Your survival is a testament not only to your strength, but to your readiness. When you finally step into the next stage of your soul's mission, you will begin to notice something remarkable. You will start to meet people who reflect your growth, not your wounds. You will find opportunities that match your frequency rather than your fear. You will be drawn to environments that nourish your spirit instead of draining it. You will feel an internal pull toward things that bring meaning rather than distraction. The alignment you have been craving will begin to take shape, not because life suddenly became easier, but because you became prepared. Everything you endured taught you how to carry wisdom, how to recognize truth, and how to navigate life with depth and clarity. These are the qualities your purpose requires. You survived because your story is meant to continue. You survived because your energy is needed. You survived because your spirit carries something that cannot be replicated. And most importantly, you survived because the next chapter of your life demands someone who has lived through darkness and returned with light. Your past hardships were not the end of your journey. They were the training ground for the next stage of your soul's evolution. They shaped you, strengthened you, and awakened you. They prepared you for a life that requires courage, authenticity, intuition, and emotional mastery. Your purpose is not in the wounds you received, but in the transformation that came from them. The path ahead is not about pain, it is about power. And the very fact that you are still here means you are ready. As we reach the end of this message, take a moment to look at the journey you have taken, not just through this video, but through your life. Everything we've uncovered reflects a truth that has been present within you all along, even if you didn't always have the words for it. The weight you carried was not ordinary. The challenges you faced were not the standard trials people casually move through or forget. They were the kind of experiences that reshape a person from the inside out, the kind that strip away illusions and reveal the core of who you are. What you endured required strength that many people never have to summon, and the fact that you carried that weight and continued forward says more about your character than anyone around you may ever fully recognize. But you didn't face that darkness alone. Even when you felt abandoned, even when silence seemed to stretch endlessly around you, even when the world felt cold and indifferent, guidance was there. You were protected in moments you didn't realize were dangerous. You were steadied when your spirit was trembling. You were pulled back from edges you didn't see clearly at the time. Something kept you moving, kept you breathing, kept you alive when the pain could have easily overtaken you. That presence, quiet, steady, and constant, followed you through every heartbreak, every loss, every moment when the world felt too heavy to bear. You may not have seen your spirit guides, but you have felt their influence in the way your story refused to end, in the way small signs appeared when you needed them most, and in the way you always managed to take one more step forward, even when you didn't know how. And now, your survival speaks for itself. It is not random, it is not meaningless. It is not simply a matter of resilience or endurance, though you possess plenty of both. Your survival is a signal, a marker that your life carries a deeper purpose, one that required you to develop the strength, awareness, intuition, and emotional intelligence that only hardship could awaken. You survived because you were meant to. You survived because there is more for you to do, more for you to embody, more for you to step into. Your soul has been shaped by fire, but not destroyed by it. Instead, it has been forged into something stronger, clearer, and more aligned with the path ahead. This is the beginning of understanding your place in the world through a different lens. You are not here by accident. You are not standing on the other side of your struggles without reason. You are here because your spirit carries something powerful, something that needed to be awakened, something that needed to be sharpened, something that is now ready to guide the next part of your journey. Every hardship was preparation. Every moment of survival was empowerment. Every step you took through darkness brought you closer to your own light. And before we close, remember this: you were never alone, not for a single moment. The same guidance that carried you through your past is still with you now. It will continue to walk beside you as you step into whatever comes next. If this message reached you at the right time, like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe for more.